It happened. The Leafs live to fight one more day. They forced a Game 7 in their best-of-7 series against the Boston Bruins. We're going to have reaction coming up.
The federal government will provide the city of Toronto with $104 million to help host 6 matches at the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
And it's going to be a tough weekend to get around the city in a car. We're going to take a look at all the weekend road closures coming up, including the ones for the Toronto Marathon.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Lena Latafad.
And I'm Bakari Savage. It's now a one-game series between the Leafs and the Bruins. This is after Toronto climbed out of a 2-game hole to force Game 7.
CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us live with a recap. Melissa.
What a game last night. Were you guys watching? It was thrilling, Bakari and Lena.
I was getting score updates.
And I was obviously watching CP24 for the obviously.
But I was watching the other
well, let me
game.
tell you, I was watching.
5.
And there was a throng of fans also out at Maple Leaf Square watching the whole game go down. Let me give you a quick recap. The Leafs won. Yeah, big deal. Forcing a Game 7 that goes down Saturday in Boston. But you can bet that people are going to be cheering so loud here, the Leafs in Boston will be hearing us. The star of the game, William Nylander. What's interesting about his story, too, it kind of follows along with how the Leafs have been doing in this series. Not so great off the top. Nylander, of course, we didn't see him off the top, but boy, has he entered into this series with a force. We talked to him last night after the game. Here's some of what he had to say.
Obviously, it sucks being on the sidelines, but I mean, like I said before, I was so proud of the team, the way they were competing and battling in those games that I was out, and nice to be able to come back and score some goals. And I mean, the team has been battling. Obviously, Maddie's out too, so I think we're just competing every night.
And how will they compete on Saturday? Some more details about that strategy might be coming in, just about half an hour from now. We're at Ford Performance Center right now, and that is where media is showing up. We're seeing them actually walk in right at this very moment to talk to players, to talk to the team's leadership about how exactly they plan to pull off a win tomorrow night to clinch the series. Other activity going on in here, the Stanley Cup keeper. We got to catch up with him, shining up the cup. Phil Pritchard tells us exactly what it means to see the Leafs do so well so late into the series.
In this area, obviously in Southern Ontario, there's diehard Leaf fans everywhere. But the amazing thing about the Toronto Maple Leafs is there's fans right across the country, right across North America, and even right across the globe. The Toronto Maple Leaf logo, it's kind of emblematic of what Canada is in hockey, that Maple Leaf.
Again, it means a lot to the whole community. Phil says that it really brings everybody together to see the team do so well. Again, Game 7, that is going to decide the Leafs' fate. It is happening tomorrow night in Boston. Puck is dropping at 8 p.m. Bakari and Lena, you got to be watching that one.
So here's the deal. I'm going to be watching Game 7. Thursday nights are reserved for SVU. But listen, I had my phone refreshing the ESPN app for the score, okay? So I was keeping tabs.
We'll be watching Game 7. Don't you worry, Mel. Thanks so much for this. Melissa Duggan reporting live.
Thank you. That's a promise.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the federal government is chipping in $104 million to support Toronto hosting 6 FIFA World Cup games in 2026.
CP24's Courtney Hills is at BMO Field with more details. And also, Court, BMO Field is going to have to undergo some renovations or expansions to help accommodate all of this.
Yeah, they will be making some changes here at BMO Field for the big tournament, given just how many people will be here in 2 years. 2 years from now, 2026, Toronto will host the FIFA World Cup. It is an exciting time. A lot of people looking forward to the games, the 6 games we will host. But there have been all of these questions surrounding how much the federal government would be contributing and what the overall price tag will be for this tournament. We don't have the final price for this just yet, but what we learned today, as you guys mentioned, the federal government will be covering $104 million. We know the province already stepping up to cover 97 million. So that still means there's close to about 180 million the City of Toronto has to figure out. Early estimates suggest we're looking at a price tag of about 380 million. We asked the mayor about this, about how much the City of Toronto could be on the hook for. Here's what she had to say about trying to move forward with the games.
The deal is signed, the bid is signed. We will move forward. I'll do my best to contain the cost. Maybe it'll be less. We will do our best in trying to raise some funds. So we will move ahead. And perhaps the federal government being able to cover some of the security cost, which is about a third of the whole bill, we might be able to bring that number down.
The mayor announced earlier this year she was putting together a special advisory committee consisting of some current councillors and former Toronto City councillors to really take a look at the overall cost breakdown associated with hosting the FIFA World Cup in 2026, because she had concerns of just how much this could all cost. I asked her if she's had any update from that group yet. She said they were waiting on the amount from the federal government. And again, what is new, we now know the feds will be covering about 104. The feds were also asked if there's a possibility here, if the tournament costs even more than the projected 380 million, if they will step in to cover it. They said they're open to conversations, but they'd like to stay at the number that they're looking at right now, which is the 104 million. So this is something we'll have to stay on top of, guys, because there is a very good chance that we'll be looking at a significant price tag, more than the 380 million when it comes to the big tournament coming to Toronto in 2 years. Over to you.
Yeah, more to come on this story. Courtney Heels, thanks so much. To Mississauga now, where a cyclist has been rushed to hospital after being struck. Chopper 24 was over the scene at Mississauga Road and the Indian Roadway. Peel police say the male victim was hit just before 8:30 in the morning and taken to a trauma center with life-threatening injuries. The vehicle remained at the scene. Roads in the area remain closed for the investigation.
The Toronto Marathon is going to take over the city streets Sunday. Tens of thousands of runners from more than 50 countries are going to make their way from Yonge and Sheppard to Exhibition Place. Participants can compete in a full marathon, half marathon, a 10K, relay, or 5K run and walk event. The event aims to raise $1 million for several local charities. And along with that, this is going to be a pretty difficult weekend to get around in a vehicle across the city because there's going to be multiple road closures in place. A short stretch of Bay Street between Richmond and Adelaide, that's going to be closed from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. tomorrow, tease a crane. Drivers will not be able to turn north on Bay Street from Lakeshore from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow, and Lakeshore is going to be reduced to a single westbound lane leading up to Bay. Then on Sunday, the Toronto Marathon will result in rolling road closures. Major roadways such as Rosedale Valley, Bayview, Front Street, and Lakeshore will all be impacted. Also on Sunday, Queen's Park Crescent between College and Bloor, it's going to be closed from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. This will be for the annual Ontario Police Memorial Foundation Ceremony of Remembrance.
And there will be GO train service disruptions on both the Lakeshore East and West lines this week. There will be no Lakeshore East train service from late tonight until Monday morning because of construction. Replacement buses will serve Union Station and stations in Durham only. On the Lakeshore West line, service between Oakville and West Harbour will be reduced to hourly, and that disruption will continue for the next 6 weekends. Also this weekend, disruptions on the Stouffville line to tell you about. Rail service will only run between Old Elm and Kennedy GO Station. This is to allow for critical track work along the corridor. Customers traveling to and from Kennedy GO Station are encouraged to use the TTC.
And Premier Doug Ford's Conservatives have won 2 by-elections. Hamid is who once sought a federal Liberal nomination, captured the riding of Milton. And the riding has been vacant since Cabinet Minister Parm Gill resigned in February to join the federal Conservatives. This by-election was seen as the first real test for new Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, who had considered running for the Milton seat herself. Well, in southwestern Ontario, Conservative Steve Pinsonneau is the winner of Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. This riding was previously held by Cabinet Minister Monty McNaughton. And CTV political commentator Scott Reed said that these results were another major statement from the government.
6 years after getting elected premier, Doug Ford is in full and firm control of politics in this province. Right? He is literally running away with it. He's above 40%. His opposition parties are sort of even Steven in the mid-20s. He's got the opposition split against him. Bonnie Crombie hasn't been able to get momentum. It's early in her tenure. But, you know, by any measure, this is really welcome news for Doug Ford.
The Liberals finished second in both by-elections, with the opposition New Democrats coming in a distant third.
Home sales in the GTA dropped last month, but new listings surged. The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board says that created more choice for buyers and kept prices stable. Just over 7,100 homes changed hands in April, compared with nearly 7,500 last year. The average selling price was up 0.3% year over year to $1,156,000. New listings jumped more than 47% over the same period.
I think you will start to see people move off the sidelines as soon as the Bank of Canada makes a cut, but even more so as we get into that, 50, 75, 100 basis points. And that's what some of our polling shows, is that, where rates are right now is such an affordability hit that there's some households that have every intention on purchasing a home, but they need to see, quite a bit of relief. And so some of those individuals may move into the market, this year, even more so, though, as we move into 2025, I would say.
TREB attributes the increase in new listings to many homeowners anticipating more demand this spring, but says many would-be home buyers are likely waiting for the Bank of Canada to actually begin cutting its policy rate before purchasing a home.
A new category of drugs that can be used to treat diabetes and help people lose weight are becoming increasingly popular.
And let's bring in CTV National's Scott Hurst for the latest on the story. Scott, tell us more about this new weight loss drug coming to Canada.
Lena and Bakari, by now you've very likely heard of Ozempic. That is the diabetes drug that has been used very widely off-label for weight loss and weight management. Now we're talking about Wegovy, which will soon be available for people in Canada, and that will be available starting Monday. It is a weekly injection approved for weight loss for patients diagnosed with obesity, and that is a clear distinction medical professionals want to make. It is ultimately a higher dose of the drug Ozempic, both made by the same drug maker, Novo Nordisk. Wegovy is classified as an anti-obesity medication, Ozempic a type 2 diabetes drug, but has been prescribed and used for obesity and weight management. Health Canada approved Wegovy back in 2021, but it's taken this long to get to the Canadian market amid supply shortages of Ozempic, as it's become incredibly popular, particularly south of the border, for weight loss and weight management. Now, with the drug labeled for obesity, many here in Canada hope it improves access for patients who really need it. Bakari and Lena.
Okay, so Scott, are there any reported dangers to these types of drugs?
Well, of course, with any drug, there are the side effects that could come with it, so you are advised to consult a medical professional before taking any of them. But there is a concern with Wegovy coming on the market in Canada, particularly since it is specifically designed for people dealing with obesity. And obesity is a significant problem here in Canada, maybe not so much as it is south of the border, but there are still more than 8 million people in Canada who live with obesity. And there's been a really stratospheric, astronomical rise over the past couple of years in the rates of obesity, and a huge concern, an alarming rise in the rate of childhood obesity. So the big concern from medical professionals, and they want this to be clear, this is a medical treatment for a medical condition and needs to be taken with a medical consultation. It is another tool for healthcare providers to treat patients with obesity. And the concern is here, it'll be used for cosmetic reasons, basically for weight management and weight loss. And there's a particular concern for teens and young adults, often very susceptible and influenced for those cosmetic regions. So a big concern as this comes on the market in Canada about the misuse and overuse, meaning this drug ultimately in the long term may not be available for those who particularly need it.
Okay, CTV National, Scott Hurst. Scott, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, we'll talk to the Canadian Civil Liberties Association about the encampment set up at the University of Toronto. This is now day 2. Stay with us.
Whether you're a Jewish student, whether you're Palestinian, whether you have strong feelings on one side or the other. And on that, we have to trust both universities to manage their campuses right, and local police have jurisdiction to do their work to make sure that everyone is safe.
Under the Charter rights, people have the right to assemble, to express themselves, as long, in my books, that it's done, as you said, peacefully, lawfully, respectfully, no hate, right? That's key. Having said that, because that's not public land, so the City of Toronto have no control over it. It belongs to the University of Toronto. So it's really up to the university administration to decide what they want to do, and then they would give the instruction to the police.
A pro-Palestinian protest encampment at the University of Toronto remains this afternoon, and it appears the school has no immediate plans to force those student protesters out. For a closer look at the situation, we're now joined live by Harini Sivalingam, Equality Director for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Thank you so much for making time for us right here on CP24.
Thank you for talking about this important issue.
So the U of T said last night that protesters could stay past that 10 p.m. deadline, but it does want the encampments to be gone. Student protesters, on the other hand, say they will stay until the school hears their concerns. Let's just start with your reaction to these encampments.
Yeah, so universities and colleges must take the necessary steps to protect the physical safety of individuals on its campus. But at the same time, we must also remember the importance of fundamental freedoms in our democracy. So specifically in relation to these student protests, freedom of expression is a cornerstone in public discourse around these types of complex issues in the public sphere. And there's a basis for the protests that we are seeing across campuses. So, this fostering of free exchange of ideas allows for these types of critical engagement in public debate. And they're important charter rights and principles that should flourish and be protected.
I want to get your reaction to what the U of T is saying today. In a statement, part of their statement says our campuses are private property, and we're increasingly concerned about reports of threats, discriminatory language, hate speech, public health and safety, and trespassing, destruction of property, and other illegal activity. The school has said students could be suspended if they stay. What is your reaction to that?
So our reaction is the freedom to peacefully protest is also a protected activity in our democracy. And some freedoms at times are actually intended to cause these kinds of disruptions in order to be impactful. So you can draw an analogy between, the right to strike in, workplaces, which are also private property, and the rights of unions and workers to engage in, strike action, protest actions are similar, right? That even though they are on private spaces, there are protected rights to ensure that, these important freedoms are limited as minimally as possible, and that there's strong protections for freedom of expression, which are essential for meaningful public debate and discussion.
This hasn't happened at the school, and there's no word if it will, but it certainly has happened on other campuses. What is the CCLA's position on police intervention?
In the context of campus spaces, this is particularly important. Campuses have always been places where there are free flow of speech and ideas and opinions, and these should continue to be encouraged and protected. So, history demonstrates that minority and marginalized groups have needed to rely on these types of expressive methods to communicate their concerns, and to bring focus and attention to their causes where they traditionally haven't been able to engage in other types of public spaces. Our position is that these types of spaces should be protected. These types of protest movements should be, as long as they're peaceful and, lawful, that they are protected activities.
I wonder where you think this is going to go, because last night the school did say that it wasn't going to kick these students out, even though it had given them a 10 p.m. deadline. It sounds like the students are staying. We know in Quebec, at McGill, students there filed for an injunction, and that request was denied. Do you expect similar injunctions to be filed here in Toronto?
So I can't speculate on whether there will be injunctions filed in Toronto, but that important decision from the Quebec Superior Court found that there's currently no evidence that there is a threat to physical safety of individuals on McGill campus in that context. And CCLA welcomes the court's decision to dismiss the injunction application. It was an important decision for freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Harini Sivalingam, Equality Director for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Thanks so much for your perspective on this. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Right now it is 12:21, 16 degrees. Coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, it's opening day at Canada's Wonderland. Get ready. All right, get ready to make some memories because it's opening day at Canada's Wonderland.
We are live at the park today, and this year visitors can enjoy more than 200 rides and attractions, as well as special events. New this year is Moosehorn Falls, a boomerang water slide that opens in June. I believe this is it. Also in June, a food and wine festival will be open on weekends, featuring tastings and live entertainment. Celebration Canada Festival will run from June 28th to July 7th, and you can take in 2 fireworks shows on both June 30th and July 1st.
And our Bill Coulter and Ji Young Lee, they were at the park this morning. They were brave enough to try out the Tundra Twister.
I love the roller coasters. I love the feeling of flying. And I tend to, when I get nervous, I tend to narrate my way through these things. So if I continuously talk through this entire ride, just bear with me. Oh my goodness.
Okay, Bill, you have to hold my hand.
We are holding hands. Let's lock fingers here.
Okay.
I'm actually enjoying every, oh, I feel like a bird. And I'm going, oh, this is really intense. Oh, look at the view. Wow,
oh no.
Weird and twisting. Oh, this is very joyous.
And we should thank our viewers who are on the ride with us.
Yes. Thank you for coming from all over. From Cambridge. Oh my God! Oh wow, this is intense. Oh, I love this. Oh my God! Yeah, and big days. There are so many days that you can come out and plan your day here. The new slide, which sounded really cool, is Splashworks. It's opening in June. This is amazing, actually. What was I ever afraid of?
Oh, that is so good. I love G's screams there. I feel like I have secondhand anxiety from watching that video.
Anxiety?
Yes. I can't. I like the kids' rides. Canada's Wonderland, we should mention, will be open until October.
Well, something for the whole family. The Jays are going to be looking for some offense. This as they head out on the road for 5 games starting tonight in Washington. So Toronto has scored just over 20 runs over the past 9 games. Yusei Kikuchi gets to start tonight in the series opener against the Nationals. First pitch is at 6:45.
Coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, the Leafs live to fight one more day. They have a Game 7 in their best-of-7 series against the Boston Bruins to look forward to. We're going to have tons of fan reaction coming up. The Leafs live to fight one more day. They have forced a Game 7 in their best-of-7 series against the Boston Bruins. We'll have reaction coming up.
The federal government will provide the city of Toronto with $104 million to help host 6 matches at the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
And it's going to be a tough weekend to get around the city in a car. We'll take a look at all the weekend road closures coming up, including the ones for the Toronto Marathon.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at noon. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thanks so much for being with us. The federal government is chipping in about $100 million to support Toronto hosting 6 FIFA World Cup games in 2026.
CP24's Courtney Hills is live at BMO Field with more details. Courtney.
Good afternoon, Bakari and Lena. And there has been this big question mark for some time now. How much would the federal government cover when Toronto hosts the World for FIFA 2026? We received that answer earlier today, $104 million. Some, though, still raising questions about how much this is going to cost Torontonians, because the latest estimate through city staff suggesting the tournament, the 6 games here in Toronto, likely to cost about $380 million. We're getting a lot of reaction to the announcement today by the federal government. For more on this, let's bring in Councillor Josh Matlow with Toronto. Councillor, thank you so much for your time. You've been pretty vocal about concerns about the ballooning cost of the tournament and the agreement the city signed on with this. What's your reaction to the amount that the feds say they're going to offer up for this?
Well, I'm very grateful to the federal government for putting in $104 million toward the games. It brings Toronto closer to a third arrangement between us, the provincial government, and the feds, as it should be. That being said, though, the provincial government and the federal government, they're going to be okay financially because their taxes, their revenue tools, grow with the economy. Toronto's don't, meaning that we're going to be on the hook for about at least $180 million. And that's why I've moved a motion to look for, other ways, creative ways, to bring in revenue on these games to make taxpayers right. It's been a stumbling journey. There are arguments to be made that we shouldn't have actually agreed to these games until we knew that we had the federal and provincial commitments, but now we do. But we also need to do a lot more to make sure that we can bring in enough money during these games so that we still can invest in all the priorities that Torontonians have on a day-to-day basis. The games are going to be a lot of fun. They're going to bring in, I think it's going to be good for the local economy, for businesses. Certainly a lot of eyes around the world are going to be on our city, which is good for tourism and pride, and for our communities who are going to be cheering for teams that they may have grown up with in countries around the world. So I think it's going to be a really positive experience, but it has been handled very poorly in many respects. The agreements that the city has signed have not been good for our city, but now we need to make the best of it and make the games a success.
Mm-hmm. And, the mayor has acknowledged this, that it's important that we move forward with this because, yes, Toronto is going to be hosting the games no matter what. So we know $104 million from the feds, $97 million from the province. It looks like Toronto's then on the hook for about $180 million. Are you concerned that number will continue to grow?
Yeah, historically, if you look at games like whether it be FIFA or other major international tournaments, the numbers typically, if not always, grow. So that's why I've asked city staff, and I know the mayor agrees full-heartedly, that we need to look at how to see the potential of these games to bring in revenue outside of revenue tools like taxes, but other creative ways to bring in revenue into the city coffers to make taxpayers right. Everyone's going to be doing it. The private sector is going to be doing it. I expect kids are going to be going out there with lemonade stands. Everyone's going to try to do well off these games, and so should the city of Toronto. So that we can have a successful tournament in Toronto, have a lot of pride and fun. But at the end of the day, I want to come out of this both with enough revenue to be able to make taxpayers right, but also to invest into a legacy, for example, to provide better access to recreation for vulnerable youth, do things that are going to leave this city better than FIFA found us. Right now, it looks like FIFA has the upper hand, and I want Toronto to catch up.
Okay. For sure. Councillor, thank you so much. I'm afraid that's all the time we have, but we do appreciate your take on this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Lena Bakari, also important to note, the mayor has acknowledged that there are concerns surrounding the price tag of hosting the game. That is why she's put together a special advisory committee that will be looking at different ways to save money, also bring in partnerships and sponsorships, looking forward to 2026. Over to you.
All right, Courtney, thanks so much for that conversation with Councillor Matlow. Okay. Let's talk about the Leafs now. It's now a one-game series between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Bruins after Toronto climbed out of a two-game hole to force a Game 7. They did it.
They did. CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us live with the recap. Melissa.
Hey, Bakari, we've got some breaking news here. The doors just opened on the Leafs dressing room, and that's here at Ford Performance Center for a media availability. We're going to be hearing from members of the team and their leadership what their plan is for tomorrow, Game 7 going down in Boston. This likely the last time we're going to hear from the Leafs in their dressing room before tomorrow night's game. How did they pull off that win last night? It was a 2-1 victory against the Bruins. That tied up the series at 3 games apiece. Whoever wins tomorrow's night's game is going to walk away with all the marbles and then take those marbles and bring them to the second round series of the playoffs. After the game, Coach Sheldon Keefe, he spoke with the media and kind of shared what the secret sauce was for sticking around for the Leafs. Have a listen.
When you're
backs against the wall and you're challenged the way that we are and you're facing elimination, I think you're going to be remembered one way or the other. So how do you want that to be and to look? And like I said, the guys pulled together here and found ways to win. We've been talking a lot about it. It takes what it takes, whether it was us, being comfortable winning the game 1-0. If that's what it was going to take, that's what it's going to take. So, yeah, like I said, guys worked incredibly hard.
So what's it going to take to go the next step? What does history teach us all about this? Listen, we talked to a hockey historian and author a little earlier, Kevin Shea. We asked him, when you look back at maybe where the Leafs went wrong, what they have to do in the future to stick around, here's what he told us.
It's the same thing year after year. You want your big boys to deliver. And sometimes when they're being checked into the ice, they just can't. And you need your secondary players or your tertiary players or whatever you want to call them to come and step forward too. And if they can't get it done, that's where we have the disappointment.
Speaking of history, check this out. A little look at, some Stanley Cups that the Leafs have won before in our past. Will they add another banner up here pretty soon? We're going to have to stick around and wait. Of course, the Leafs just need to win one more, come out on top one more time to be able to stick around and get one step closer to that Stanley Cup. We're going to find out what the players have to say, what the team's leadership has to say, what their plan is for tomorrow. Bakari, Lena?
All right, looking forward to that reaction. Melissa Duggan, thanks so much for this. The Toronto Marathon will take over the city streets on Sunday. Tens of thousands of runners from more than 50 countries will make their way from Yonge and Sheppard to Exhibition Place. Participants can compete in a full marathon, half marathon, 10K relay, or a 5K run and walk events. The event aims to raise $1 million for several local charities. It's going to be a difficult weekend to get around in a vehicle across the city. Remember that. There are multiple road closures in place. A short stretch of Bay Street between Richmond and Adelaide. That's going to be closed from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. tomorrow to use a crane. Drivers will not be able to turn north on Bay Street from Lakeshore from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow. And then Lakeshore will be reduced to a single westbound lane leading up to Bay. Then on Sunday, as we were just talking about, the Toronto Marathon will result in rolling road closures. Major roads like Rosedale Valley, Bayview, Front Street, and Lakeshore will be impacted. It could be a really tricky drive. Transit will be your friend. Also on Sunday, we should note Queen's Park Crescent between College and Bloor will be closed from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the annual Ontario Police Memorial Foundation ceremony of remembrance. So tons of road closures to keep in mind this weekend.
Okay, so those road closures are for this weekend, but right now it's 12:39, 16 degrees. Let's get a check on things during this lunch hour with Adjoa Insia-Yabois. Adj.
Yeah, good afternoon, Bakari. We are dealing with problems in the mix. So added with the construction, problems happening on the westbound lanes of the 401. This is on the approach to Yonge Street in the Collectors. Crews dealing with a collision involving a transport truck. It does have the right lane occupied. There is a bit of a slowdown as you do make your way from Warden. Then eastbound on the 401, rush hours comes early on a Friday, so it's already slow from Renforth all the way out to the 400. And we were dealing with issues that were happening on the westbound lanes of the Gardner on the approach to the 427. Crews were dealing with a collision. It did have the left lane, actually the center lane blocked, and the problems there have all been cleared. I'll send it back to you, Lena and Bakari.
The CP24 traffic report is brought to you by CapitalDirect.ca.
All right, coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, we're going to be joined by the winner of last night's by-election in Milton. An inquiry report says that foreign interference by China did not have any effect on the results of the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. The interim report notes that while it is possible that outcomes in a small number of ridings were affected by meddling, this cannot be said with certainty. The commissioner did say that foreign interference undermined public trust in democracy, perhaps the greatest harm caused by the meddling. And the public inquiry heard 10 days of testimony, plus the commissioner was able to access secret documents.
To provincial politics now. Premier Doug Ford's Conservatives won 2 by-elections last night, one in Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, and one in Milton. Z. Hamid, who once sought a federal Liberal nomination, captured the riding of Milton. The riding has been vacant since Cabinet Minister Parm Gill resigned in February to join the federal Conservatives. This by-election was seen as the first real test for new Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, who had considered running for the Milton seat herself. And for more on last night's win, we're joined live by Z. Hamid, PC MPP-elect for Milton. Mr. Hamid, thank you for joining us. Congratulations. What do you think worked about your campaign, and what is your message to constituents in Milton?
People in Milton recognize all the hard work our team has been doing, all the hard work our government is doing, and I think they rewarded us for it. And they want us to continue working hard and getting things done.
The Premier was spotted at your victory party last night. I'm sure you guys had a chance to chat. What did Doug Ford say to you when you won?
He congratulated me, I congratulated him, and we both talked about good stuff that's happening for Milton and getting things done for people of Ontario as well as people of Milton.
Can you give me a sense of what you heard on the campaign trail? What were some of the issues that mattered to people in Milton?
Consistently, affordability was a huge issue. Carbon tax came up a lot of doors. And we had good conversations, and people trusted the Premier and the Ford government to work on affordability.
You have worked for the Liberals, not the PCs. You ran for the Liberals in 2015. Why make that change and run for the Progressive Conservatives in Ontario? Talk about your decision if you can.
I ran for a Liberal nomination in 2015, but the priority is keeping Milton moving and keeping life affordable. And honestly, Ford government is the only government that's talking about it, that's working on these issues.
Okay.
And it's the right government for it.
Okay, Mr. Hamid, finally, as you know, there's been a lot of opposition in Milton to a proposed quarry that your party promised to cancel 4 years ago. Advocates in Milton have said you have to stop this project in its tracks. Will you? I know it's still so early. This is only day one for you, but what do you say to residents in Milton who are concerned about this issue?
Premier Ford has promised that he'll listen to the community on the quarry issue. Right now, it's going through the EA process, and we have to see the process through.
Okay, Z. Hamid, PC MPP-elect for Milton. Thanks so much for making time for us. We appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
Well, some of the biggest names in hockey there in St. John's today for a final farewell to legendary broadcaster Bob Cole.
Cole died on April 24th at the age of 90. He was best known for his role as the play-by-play announcer for Hockey Night in Canada and was the defining voice of the sport for decades.
And for more on Cole's life and legacy, we're joined live by CTV's Garrett Barry, who is in St. John's. And Garrett, there are a lot of people saying goodbye to a hockey legend today.
Yeah, there are. You know, it is hard to put in words how much he's meant to the sport, but for us here in Newfoundland and Labrador, it mattered just a little bit more that he was from home, right? We could relate to him, we could recognize him. And in a province where we don't always have a player from here, someone you know, in the starting lineup at the National Hockey League level, knowing that Bob Cole was there, that mattered a great deal, I think. And, you know, upon his passing last week, we heard from Premier Andrew Furey, who said Bob Cole allowed people in this province to dream because he was there at the highest levels, and he was a guy who worked for it, and he took himself seriously, and he pushed himself, and he was became just the voice of hockey. You think about his 50-year career. Over those 50 years, some of the greatest moments, some of the biggest moments had Bob Cole's narration. The 1972 Summit Series, the 2002 Olympic gold medal, countless National Hockey League games on a Saturday night. Bob Cole was there for just about everything that you could remember. The funeral service is underway here in St. John's at St. Thomas Anglican Church. It's at a church not too far from where Bob Cole lived for later parts of his life. Hockey broadcaster Ron McLean is here. He is expected to speak during this service to deliver in a eulogy. We have heard a little bit during the service from some of Cole's 4 children. In an obituary that his family wrote, he said, of all the jobs that Bob Cole had, and there were many, it was the role of grandfather that he enjoyed the best. Cole was 90 years old when he passed away last week. He lived in Newfoundland his whole life. It was a testament to, from what I've been hearing, from what people are saying, it's a testament to how much he was committed to this province, committed to his family in this province, that he decided that he was going to live here throughout his career. So we understand that for most of his career, he would commute, in fact, from St. John's up to arenas in Toronto and Montreal and Calgary and up to arenas across the country and across North America to deliver those legendary play-by-play performances. Then when the weekend was done, he'd fly back home to St. John's, Newfoundland. Over last week, of course, so many tributes have been pouring in. I spoke in particular to Randy Piercy, who is a longtime hockey coach, player, commentator here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And he said, if there's anybody famous from Newfoundland, it would have to be Bob Cole. His voice, so synonymous. He said you can almost still hear it in your head. When you think about hockey, when you watch hockey games, you can almost still hear him and the way that he would lift the game off the page, off the screen and into your home. We heard from former Premier Danny Williams, who's in attendance today. Premier Andrew Fury is here. Olympic gold medalist Brad Gushu is here. From what we have seen filter in, his family, of course, is here in attendance as well. The service is going to go for about another hour, we expect, at which point some members from the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary's mounted unit will travel with Mr. Cole's remains onto a gravesite not far from the church here in St. John's.
Okay, CTV's Garrett Barry in St. John's. Thanks so much for your reporting.
Well, the Leafs, they live to fight one more day. They forced a Game 7 in their best-of-7 series against the Boston Bruins. John Viveros, the host of Hot Take Hockey podcast, joins us live right now. John, take us back to last night. Your reaction.
Oh, Bakari, I was fired up just as a fan, just as someone part of this city. I think when you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs in the past, especially against the Boston Bruins, things don't usually go well. But now you're looking at a situation where you've forced a Game 7, Saturday night hockey. The game will take place in Boston. But you just look at the circumstances with no Austin Matthews in the lineup. And I talked about it before Game 6 that you really needed one of your stars to step up, whether it was Mitch Marner or William Nylander, and you get the 2 goals from William Nylander. Joseph Woll, another monster performance, 9.57 save percentage, and I think when you're only allowing 1 goal once again, and this time it was with 1 second left, so he just missed that shutout. Just a spectacular performance from Woll. So from Morgan Riley, 24 minutes of ice time, from Simone Benoit, 9 hits, to Joel Edmondson on the penalty kill. I just felt like this was a committee effort here from the Leafs, and then of course you get the 2 goals from your star and William Nylander. So just all across the board, Bakari. This was a huge win for the Leafs and a huge win for Leaf fans in the city.
Okay, so John, what went right? What went wrong? What needs to be improved for Game 7?
I think the scoring and the power play. You still look at the power play. They're 1 for 20 on the power play. I think that's what's most shocking to hockey insiders, experts, everyone across the game, is when you look at power plays and special teams in general. The Leafs have struggled on both sides. Last night they were good on the penalty kill, but the power play has just been a huge problem. I mean, last night you look at it, they had a 4-minute power play, weren't able to get anything going. So when you've only scored 1 out of 20 opportunities on the power play, playing 5-on-4 with that advantage, that is a huge issue for whether the Leafs even win this round. If you want to go on a Stanley Cup potential run, you cannot have those kind of numbers, about 5% on the power play. We're seeing some other contending teams, whether it's the Edmonton Oilers or the Carolina Hurricanes, marking over 20 or 30% on the power play, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, with the talent they have, only rocking about 5%. So I think that's a huge issue. And then, of course, just scoring in general. They haven't been able to score still over 2 goals on Jeremy Swayman. So at some point, Boston's scoring might come out in spurts, and it might come out in Game 7 at home, and you've got to score at least 2-3 goals sometimes to win games. It's not going to always go the way it goes last night. So the power play is a huge issue, Bakari. That's got to change in Game 7.
Okay, so along those lines, look, we have been here before with this pivotal Game 7. Could we see a surprise with Austin Matthews? Could he play in Game 7?
We could. I think it really depends on what the injury is, and that's the huge issue, Bakari, is we don't know what it is. That's always the situation with playoffs until the team is finally eliminated. We don't know. There's been some speculation that whether it was a head injury he got or something lower key, maybe the lower body injury. There was a few times towards the end of the season where he got banged up, and then specifically in Game 3 of this series, he was brought down hard by Charlie McAvoy behind the net. So there's been certain circumstances whether Matthews is just battling with different things after the illness he had last week. So we really don't know timeline. He's been skating a couple times before practice, but not enough to show that he is right there knocking on the door. So with it being Game 7, all of the chips in, marbles on the line. So I just think you look at Austin Matthews, he's a star player. You want to get him into the lineup, but right now things are not looking good for him to be there. It's just a matter of how much whether it's the doctors, the staff, are you willing to risk Auston Matthews' long-term health to play the ultimate Game 7 against the Boston Bruins? I think that's the question. But I think for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they don't want to risk the Stars' long-term plan with the team.
Okay, well, let's talk about this. We have 30 seconds left. Game 7 is happening in Boston. They're home. We're away. What's it going to take to win this?
So I talked about the power play, but ultimately, Joseph Woll is the guy you are riding on right now. I mean, he has come into this series, played the last 2 games. He played for Boston College. He's got that connection. He knows the Boston market. And now he's going into TD Garden to have to face that crowd in Game 7. So I think they're going to rely on Joseph Woll. They're going to rely on their defense. And as I said, they really, really need to keep playing that matchup game against Boston, because you look at last night's game, they only allowed 1 shot from Boston through basically a period and a half to start that game. So keep the shots limited, trust in Joseph Woll, and finally exercise those demons. Bakari, they got to exercise those demons, beat Boston in Boston for Game 7.
That's right. Let's make it happen. Taking us through this series, John Faveros, the host of Hot Take Hockey Podcast. Go Leafs, go. Let's hear it.
Go Leafs, go!
All right.
And with that, thanks so much for watching CP24 live at noon.